It began with a sudden hush. The kind of silence that falls not out of respect, but out of disbelief. Men stood in line, holding duffel bags, chatter still buzzing in the background of the naval barracks. And yet all eyes had been drawn to her, the woman in worn fatigues, crouched low with a bucket of paint and a brush, her hair tied back, sweat beading along her temple. It wasn't the paint on her hands that froze them. It wasn't her quiet focus. It was the tattoo. The dark, weathered ink on her wrist caught the eye of one man, a Navy SEAL who had walked 1,000 battlefields yet never once trembled. But now he did. His steps faltered. His breath caught. His grip on his pack loosened until it thudded against the polished concrete. Because that mark on her wrist, it wasn't just a tattoo. It was theirs. A symbol of a unit that no civilian should have borne, a reminder of men who never made it home. And the fact that it was on her, the woman painting doors in silence, treated like invisible labor, was impossible. The SEAL stared, heart-pounding. He whispered words that only he could hear. No one outside the Brotherhood should carry that mark, unless they bled for it. Her name was Clare Halstead. To the men rushing past, she looked like a maintenance worker, one of the many hired to freshen up the barracks, make the place presentable for new deployments. She kept her head down. She didn't ask for acknowledgement. But if anyone had looked closer, they would have seen her shoulders, too squared, too disciplined, for ordinary labor. They would have noticed how she carried herself, how she didn't slouch even after hours bent over paint cans. Most walked by her with dismissive glances. Some muttered jokes under their breath. One young sailor laughed when paint streaked across her fatigues, whispering something about grunts who can't cut it. No one corrected him. But that mark, it screamed of sacrifice, of silence, of a history buried too deep for casual mockery. Years earlier, Clare had worn a uniform not unlike theirs, though most of these men had never known her name. She had been an Army combat medic, attached to a Special Operations Task Force. Her unit had been ambushed in a valley far from home, where the air reeked of sand and iron, where smoke curled against a crimson sky. She had crawled through fire to drag the wounded. She had pressed her bare hands against torn flesh, whispering promises she knew she couldn't keep. And she had lost them. One by one, brothers in arms slipped away in her grasp. Her sergeant's last words had been sharp but tender. If you make it home, carry us with you. Never let them forget. The tattoo came after. A memorial. A vow inked into her skin, tracing the emblem of a unit that lived only in memory. The world never knew their names, but she would never let them vanish. When the army discharged her, her body whole but her spirit fractured, she slipped into silence. She didn't chase glory, or medals, or recognition. She found work where no one asked questions, blending into the background, scrubbing, painting, fixing what others overlooked. She lived as though the world had no place for her, until the day a SEAL saw the mark on her wrist. The barracks hall buzzed again. A lieutenant strode past, barely sparing her a glance. "Make sure those doors are done by tonight," he said, as though she were a ghost. "Yes, sir," she murmured, even though he was already gone. Behind her, 2 recruits snickered. "She missed a spot," one said loudly, pointing at the edge of the freshly painted door. "Maybe they should have hired someone who knows what they're doing." Their laughter echoed down the hall. She didn't look up. She dipped her brush again, shoulders steady, movements precise. Every stroke of paint was slow, deliberate. To them, it was silence. To her, it was resistance. The SEAL who had stopped, the one whose hands still shook at the sight of her tattoo, watched everything. He saw the way the younger men mocked, the way the officer dismissed her. He saw the quiet endurance written in the set of her jaw. And something inside him burned. Days passed, and word spread quietly among the SEAL team. They whispered about the woman with the ink. Some dismissed it as coincidence. Some said it must have been a mistake. Others, older, sharper, spoke of rumors, of a medic who had carried men out of fire when no one else could. Still, The mockery continued. Sailors walked past her without acknowledgement. Officers barked orders without eye contact. She was invisible in plain sight, enduring each moment with a kind of composure only forged in war. The SEAL's name was Mason Hale. He had fought enough battles to know the weight of symbols. And he couldn't shake the image of that wrist. He began asking questions, quiet ones. The answers returned in fragments, records sealed, missions classified. But one truth cut through. Clare Halstead had saved lives. More than anyone in the building would ever know. And now she was painting doors while boys who'd never seen blood smirked behind her back. The breaking point came on a humid afternoon. Clare was kneeling near the mess hall doors when a group of sailors filed past. One, brash and careless, glanced down at her wrist. "Nice ink," he sneered. "Bet you picked that up at some strip mall, huh? Trying to look tough?" Laughter followed him. But the SEAL, Mason, was there. He stepped forward before thought could stop him. His shadow cut across Clare's wrist, covering the tattoo. The hall went quiet as his voice, low and sharp, carved through the air. "Do you even know what that symbol means?" The sailor blinked, scoffing. "It's just a tattoo." Mason's gaze hardened, years of loss sharpening into steel. "No, it's not just a tattoo. It's a graveyard. It's a promise. It's the weight of men better than you'll ever be." The laughter died. Silence thickened. Clare looked up for the first time, her eyes meeting Mason's. And though she said nothing, the quiet gratitude in her gaze was louder than any shout. From that day things changed. Not immediately, not with fanfare. But slowly, respect began to ripple. Mason spoke to his team. Others listened. Word spread that the woman painting doors had walked through hell while most were still in high school. That tattoo was not decoration. It was remembrance. Bystanders who once stayed silent began to nod when they passed her. The laughter ceased. Conversations hushed in her presence. But the true shift came one evening, when Clare stood to pack up her brushes. She turned, and found the entire SEAL team waiting. No words. No orders. Just men who had carried the same weight, standing in quiet formation. One by one, they raised their hands in salute. Not to rank, not to command, but to sacrifice. Clare froze. Her throat tightened. For the first time since the war, she felt seen. Mason broke the silence, his words steady, carrying for all to hear. Some battles don't end when the war does. But dignity is forever. Another voice rose from the team, quiet but unshakable. The strongest warriors are the ones who never needed recognition. Only remembrance. And finally, Clare herself, voice trembling but resolute, whispered words that spread through the barracks like fire. "They can forget my name, but they will never forget the ones I carry." The next morning, when officers arrived, they found something remarkable. The barracks doors, once dull, were now painted not just with fresh coats, but with subtle, precise details. Clare had added faint stenciled initials, barely visible unless you looked closely. The initials of the fallen. No one dared touch them. And outside, in full view of the younger sailors who once mocked her, the SEAL team stood shoulder to shoulder beside Clare. No announcement. No speeches. Just silent presence, unshakable and immovable. The mockery never returned. The disrespect evaporated. And the woman once invisible became, without a word, a living testament to sacrifice. Respect is not earned through titles, nor demanded through noise. Sometimes it is carried quietly, in scars, in ink, in silence too heavy for the untested to understand. Clare Halstead did not seek recognition. She only sought to honor the fallen. Yet in her silence, she reminded all who witnessed her, dignity does not shout, it endures. As the SEAL stood with her, the barracks learned a truth that should echo far beyond those walls. Heroes are not always the ones we cheer. Sometimes, they are the ones painting doors, carrying memories the rest of us could never bear. Wherever you're watching from, remember this story. Share it. Speak of those who carried burdens we will never see. And if you believe silent strength deserves respect, stand with them in your own way. Because sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with silence.